I'm Art Stevens with 1863 Ventures, and we're absolutely thrilled to have you today for our 3 R's presentation by Capital One. Understanding the business-to-business sales process today. We're going to be going over a number of issues, but what I really want to make sure we get out of this thing are three basic purposes around clarity, around process and moving from activity, and then a quick look at some of the process and systems that we can use to move us forward on that. The 3 R's process is for recover, rebuild, and resilience. And the program is a joint program. We have really three elements. We're looking at this as a Thinkific program through our teaching platform. So we hope you'll go to the program and sign up because there's much more content there. We have these live content presentations we're going to be sprinkling throughout the presentation to make sure we give you some very specific follow-up and a deeper dive into some of the areas we're covering there. But a total of 20 hours of curated training on our Thinkific program. We have one-on-one monthly check-ins with a coach and some brain trust opportunities for up to 3 months afterwards. And for the DC-based businesses, there's a $5,000 grant potential at the end. So really want to make sure that we give you as much information and as much support in your business as we can, because this is obviously both a challenging time, but also a time of great opportunity. And we want to give people the best chance they can to move their business forward. So really appreciate you being here. I'm going to jump in with a business-to-business presentation. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and I will follow up with those as we're moving through. Thank you. As I said, focus for today is getting to your clarity of your message and your customer experience, moving from activity to management. Ultimately, as you scale any business, what we're really looking forward are moving from this kind of I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, to these systems and processes have to happen to move people from never having heard from me to being happy, successful customers. And finally, we'll look at the process and systems you can use to implement that. So we talk a lot about funnels. And in this process, what we're looking at are which are the processes that you're moving your customer through from I've never heard of you to I am a repeat purchaser to I'm an advocate. I'm actually going and telling other people. So we're going to look at the two sides of that coin. We're going to look at the process when we talk about a funnel of the experience of the customer, and then we're going to look at the process of the business to create that experience. And they're different, obviously, but they're getting to the same goal. Move back here. So on the funnels, what we're looking at basically are the processes that you're going to take on the left. This is the initial contact, the qualifications, developments, and you're going to see a number of different ways that these get stacked up. And for those who have a customer resource management system or a process already, you may have different titles for each of these steps. I'm not here to tell you what you want to call each of your steps. What I want to make sure is that there is a process that you are following that uniquely moves people through, but also that you can measure. Because what we're going to get from breaking your process into steps are two crucial things. We're going to get the amount of time, and we're going to get the amount of money that we're spending on each step. And that's incredibly important because as you're building a team of salespeople, or even if it's your own activity, you need to be able to start understanding how much of your time are you spending moving people through this process at each step. It'll tell you where you have friction or problems. Maybe you need to work on your narrative. It'll also tell you where if you need to be investing more money and looking for ways to make sure that things are moving quicker. Because ultimately it's about speed. We want to get people through the funnel as easily as possible and as inexpensively for us as possible, but in the most positive experience for them. From the customer standpoint, we all go through a similar process on a purchase. Whether it's a very simple purchase, where we're going to eat dinner tonight, to a new house, or whether on the business-to-business side, whether it's a multi-year contract for an enterprise software system that's going to be millions and millions of dollars for a large company, or whether it's office supplies. All of these things are going to get stacked up into a process where we're moving from I've never heard of the potential purchaser. I'm going to gain some awareness. I have to be interested. I have to understand what their product and services and ultimately what their unique value proposition is. I've got to engage with them somehow. If it's a big enough purchase, I may want a trial. I may want to try before I buy. I'll definitely do that for software. I'm going to demo this before I actually go and move further. And then finally, I'll purchase. But that's not the end of the process. That's really the beginning of a customer relationship. And as we know, our customers are our best salespeople. So keeping them happy is very important, but also losing them, having high customer churn, just went and threw all the money and time away that we spent on the other part of the funnel. So we want to make sure that we're thinking beyond the purchase of a sales decision and into the customer service, the customer relations, and finally into resale and referral. So first I want to spend a second, and I'm going to ask you guys to enter some things in the chat. This is going to be around, are we in an experience that is based on features or the actual benefit? Now, when we have, for instance, I'm going to look at an example here of the iPod. The iPod, when it came out, we focused on the features. Steve Jobs even famously in a presentation said, you've got a gigabyte of storage and for MP3s, very technical language. What that meant was thousands of songs in your pocket at a time where you had cassette tapes or very limited options for portable music. But even the thousands of songs in your pocket isn't really the benefit. The benefit is I want to have the experience I want to have. I want to have my music, my groove. I want to have it when I want it. That's the experience. That the feature, the numbers, and all that sort of process, that's interesting and that's helpful. But that's not what closes you. That's not what moves you forward. Ultimately, the features to benefits to real benefits is moving people away from what is about your product to what is about their life or their needs. And most sales presentations you'll see move in that way. What we're looking at on from the next example is around purchasing air miles. If you are going on an airline, this is obviously pre-COVID, this is a particular example, but if you're in a situation where you're going to be offered a new credit card, and the Southwest Airlines would tell you you get 50,000 points. Now it's up to you to know that that's a certain amount of round trip tickets or whatever else. But even that's not really the benefit. What's the benefit is you're able to take a trip that's life-changing. Now we've moved from something that's a feature of their product to an event and a memory that I will cherish. And that's going to move me along. That's going to be what makes, for me personally, and for many businesses, what's going to make you take action. If you're a contractor or working in a B2G work or on the B2B side, the experience you may talk about in your process is we have this level of efficiency. Our on-time delivery is 98%. For a trucking or logistics company, we have all the right insurance. We have all the right, you can go through all those features, but what that means is you will keep them on time and on task as the benefit. But what it really means is the individuals that are responsible for the economic buying decision aren't going to have a headache working with you. Their life is going to, they're not going to be managing this contract to the kind of the challenging level that they would need if things weren't going well. If the features you're promised, you're going to make them look good for their boss, or if they're a politician, if on the B2G side, you're going to be part of what they're going to be bragging about, their successes are when they get reelected. Whatever it is that means something to the end buyer, and it may be simple like you're saving them money or time, which is very important, but what they do with that saved money and time is the real benefit to them. So your sales process should take that in advance. If you're talking to two separate buyers within an organization, the senior management and the implementers. If you are selling to an HR department, the HR department is going to be very concerned with risk. They're going to be very concerned with the amount of time of implementing a new system. They're going to be concerned with hassle. They're going to be concerned with training. The senior executives are going to be concerned with cost and with driving the senior, the value proposition for the whole business, and may not care about as much implementation. So you want to make sure that you're addressing both and that you know who you're talking to about which. So take a moment and think about your features of your service or product, what the benefit is and what the real benefit is. And I'd be thrilled if you'd write it in the chat. We'll move on. But if someone would be willing to take a crack at what they think their feature, their benefit, and their real benefit is, and we can take a moment to talk about that.
I'm here.
Hi, Derek. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very good. So I appreciate you being the first participant. So you're looking at UV light, which we know can kill pathogens, right? That's
we say inactivate the pathogen.
Perfect. And for non-technical people, that means I don't get sick, right?
Precisely.
That's the bit. And this is obviously a challenge, right? When you're
Yes.
as a salesperson, you're used to communicating with engineers, and
Yes.
then that's great. And then the senior folks are going to say, okay, that's great. Does that mean I'm getting sick? No, you're not getting sick, right? But
Precisely.
the benefit is peace of mind for customers, staff. So give me an example of who your customer would be.
It could be a university. It could be a sporting facility.
Okay,
It could be a restaurant. Anyone that
got it.
you people occupy a space. Anyone that's gonna, an office building in that sense. But that's less now because we have these, fewer people going to the office. But the other spaces people tend to be congregating in, even restaurants as well.
Boy, is this timely, right?
Yes.
You could not be more. So when I think about your feature and your benefit, and this is very common, and I don't. What I want to provide now is review, not criticism.
Sure.
But oftentimes we stop short. So the peace of mind for customers, staff, and visitors, that's a really good benefit. But what that means is you can stay open.
Exactly. You
Right?
can stay open, and you can. The example would be, I think, as University of Michigan had to shut down because they had a major outbreak, and the question the parents and the students had: have you done everything you could have done as a university to prevent this from happening? So it gives you another tool in your tool chest that says, hey, we're doing beyond the spraying, beyond social distancing, beyond all the other steps. We've taken an extra step to ensure that we are reducing the chance of the spread of this virus.
That's fantastic. So again, then we think about the feature being the method. So what do we, what's the need? We need a way to stay open. And the one way we can't stay open if we don't have the confidence and peace of mind of our customers. And we won't
Precisely.
have the peace of mind of our customers if we have surfaces or the active spread of the disease. So our method is to kill pathogens on the surfaces using UV light, along with, obviously, with other things. But this would be a great additional strategy. And then the reason I'm good at that is X.
I'm good at that because I'm somewhat of a COVID watcher. I took the additional steps to I do a COVID watch on the Hopkins site as well as the other sites that pull in the data. I read a number of scientific journals on it, medical journals on it. I'm always in the know. I've taken the contact tracing class so I can understand how it spreads and
Okay,
how to prevent the spread. So
perfect.
I've become kind of the COVID whisperer, if you will.
So you're going to get there through expertise.
Yes.
And that's fantastic. So I'm gonna go back to the presentation, Derek. I'll put you. You can put yourself back on mute. Thank you so much for stepping up,
Sure.
and we're gonna see why this is important in a second. Because as you're going through your process and your sales process, this is the journey. Those steps are the journey that your corporate customers have to go through. I have to believe. Well, first I have to have the need to stay open. Right. So let me get back to the presentation for a second. But if I don't have to stay open, or if I'm not able to stay open, I'm not going to be reaching out to Derek. So what this features, benefits, and real benefits does is it actually is the reverse of the customer's sales process. Usually, we're starting with the very specific things we're doing, and we're moving out to how it benefits them. So they approach it from the exact opposite order. The customers approach it from need, method, vendor, and now. All sales conversions are going to walk people through these 4 steps. And not at all surprisingly, they're the reverse of the steps we just talked about. And that's why, Derek, I really appreciate you giving us a real world example, because right now I need to stay open. I mean, more than anything, I need to stay open. I can understand where I may have to reduce and look at spacing if I'm a public facility. But end of the day, if I don't have customers, my business is done. So we move from the need to the method. The method we've chosen here is an electronic intervention, the UV light. I'm sure there'll be other ones as well. But as they're going through the process, how do I stay open? how do I keep, and then the secondary need of that is for their confidence, their customers to have confidence enough to keep coming. So the method we're going to sell them is, you want to stay open. We're going to provide these UV lights. The vendor is me. I have this expertise, because if you agree that you have the need, you want to stay open and you want the confidence of your customers, and you agree that UV lighting may be a good way to deal with it, the next thing you're going to want to evaluate is the person selling it to you. In this case, Derek. So if I'm going to make this sale to you, I'm going to ask all these same questions. Well, how long have you been doing this? What is your experience? Why you versus someone else? What is the what issues have you had with other customers? And I might do some customer research to see what your experience has been with other people. All of these kind of things are going to go through the process. If I decide that the answer is yes to all those things, that I have the need, I like this method, I like this vendor, then the question is, why now? And oftentimes that's where we get more into pricing, or that's where we might come up with another way to look at, did they really agree in the whole process? But basically, for most of the decisions you come into, based on their complexity, you may be all the way out. You may start all the way out on one end. You may start in the middle. Sometimes for very simple purchases, it may just be something caught our fancy and we buy some. If it's an uncomplicated purchase made quickly, we probably don't consciously go through all these processes, right? If I drive by a ice cream store and I'll get an ice cream cone, I'm not going through this entire process. I've already started at the end, and I probably know most of these things already. So this process is based on the complexity and the experience of the customer. Do they know about what everything that is in your business, or are you educating them in the process? And that becomes a crucial part of your sales funnel. So let's take a look at the steps that we're talking about, walking them through. In a lot of these steps in the past would have happened where an individual is talking to you, particularly on the B2B side. If we look at the image, lead generation, qualifying, presentations, resolving objections, closing, customer service and relations, and resale, these are the names I like to use. Different people are going to use different names. But it's, again, what's important is that you have a definition of each one of these processes so you can manage to know how much does it cost and what is it returning. Because that is your constant series of evaluation and goals. What are the costs? What are the benefits? What used to happen is, as I was saying, many more of these processes happen with individuals. We didn't have an internet. We didn't have all this information. So, we might have met Derek at a conference, or Derek was making a presentation, or Derek sent a mass mailing, say 20 years ago, to all these facilities managers, and maybe there's an association of facilities managers or something. But he would have found different ways to work his way in. And then it was the kind of old-fashioned, let's get in front, press the flesh, hand out business cards. We're constantly working on that. So the image would have been professionalism. We would have looked at how we're printing things. Lead generation, we've just talked about. You would have been doing direct mail. You would have been going to conferences, be doing all this. And qualifying would have happened once there's an actual conversation happening with a salesperson, or in a sole proprietor with the sole proprietor. That's changed now, obviously. In 2014, we saw this shift move much farther down, with about 5 years into iPhones, and now in 2020, this process in some cases is entirely virtual. And I may do an amazing amount of research and know all sorts of things about you and your product before I ever speak to you or anyone involved with your organization, even in B2B. And that's a major change, obviously. So it has shifted the sales process to be more of what was a traditional marketing process. These very high-end funnels where we're looking at very large amounts of lead generation. We're looking at how we get through the clutter to get to people, how we build individual relationships. But the crucial element in all of that has to start with your image and brand. What do people see about you? And those are two different things, obviously. And now, more importantly than ever, what do others say about you? Again, 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of feedback. It was hard to get customer appraisals, particularly of B2B shops, but even of consumer products. Not today. Not today. We can. If anybody has a negative experience, you're 8 times more likely to share a negative experience than you are a positive one. So our image and brand has to be time spent investing in what our collateral looks like, what our website looks like, what our presence looks like, and also in making sure that our customer experiences are good, because we can control what we present, but we also have to make sure that what our customers are presenting is also positive. Lead generation, whether it's online or offline, and I'm not going to go a lot into the image lead generation process of this, because there are going to be other marketing focused seminars that we're going to be having online. I want to focus on the sales side, which is a little later in the process. And actually yesterday we had a couple excellent conversations about identifying who your leads were, personas, how you do online marketing in a much more scaled and rigorous way. So I encourage you to look at those, and I'll have links at the end of our presentation. Also, at the end of the presentation, we'll be sending out this material along with the remaining of our schedule of other online events. So lead generation and qualifying. Qualifying begins to move people on that 4-step funnel, right? If we remember, we were saying, do you have the need? Do you agree with the method? Do you agree with the vendor? The method and the vendor start to work more into the sales process. That's more about making presentations and closing. But the need, if they don't have the need, you're going to spend an awful lot of wasted time talking about features and why you're great, and you're going to see delay, constant delay. Well, yeah, that's interesting. We'll get back whenever. Oftentimes what has happened is whatever the core problem you're trying to solve is not one they're putting the same value on you are. And there's a couple easy ways to measure that, is you can ask if you've defined that feature, benefit, real benefit, and need matrix, you can run back and test and say, hey, do you need to stay open right now? Is that something that's important to you? And you've all been in a sales conversation probably of some kind where somebody steps back and ask that question of you. Hey, do you need to make, and most infomercials and sort of things start with that, like, do you need to make money? Do you need to be whatever? But they're starting with some very broad need. But if they don't have the need and you haven't tested that, and you're talking about the quality of your UV and their energy efficiency and their efficacy in killing 99 point whatever % of the pathogens, you're going to spend a lot of time and you're not going to move them down the funnel. So qualifying, test that first question because that's super important. Presentations, that can be anything from whether it's in person, online, your materials. But again, your presentation should be walking people. They should be interactive in some way. They should be conversational, depending on the complexity of your product or service. You're building a relationship with the presentation. You're moving people through that funnel. You're telling them about yourself and what's important and unique and interesting about you. So you're moving people through that process, but your presentation should be in some way walking them through those 4 steps and giving them a chance to interact at each level and finding out where those questions are. Because what's going to happen after, when we get to a certain point in the conversation, is you're going to ask for a close. You're going to move, whether it's a trial close, is this something to be interested in? Or whether it's a trial because your product or service has a trial, like, hey, we're offering 2 weeks of X, or there's a discount of Y. Then you're going to get an answer, yes or no. Then you're going to get some kind of a response. And your ability to determine the effectiveness of the rest of the conversation is going to come back to your ability to resolve objections. Because this is where we're going to test that, right? When you get to, this costs too much, you're going to get to the end and say, how much is this going to cost to treat a facility of this square footage for this amount of time? And you're going to have this whole thought out on the product cost and the installation and probably even some energy costs and all this sort of kind of thing. And they're going to go, oh, geez, that seems kind of expensive. Now that can't be the end of that conversation, right? We have to get back and so first we want to get very specific. I'm not sure I'm interested. I'm not sure about this or that. The best way to figure out, beyond a binary answer, no, I'm not interested, is to figure out where they got off the bus. Did they get off the bus at, I need a better cleaning solution? Are they looking at alternatives like being outside more? Or, where did they get off the bus? Or do they doubt your credibility to deliver? Yes, I love the UVs, but something about our interaction says I'm just not sure about you. Where you are able to support or test to the extent you've already kind of created your presentation in this order, that's going to give you a way when someone says no to test, okay, where did they get off the bus? which of the 4 steps did I lose them at? If you lost them at need, it's a long road to hoe. It's going to be a very challenging, and you have to make a decision on how much time you're going to spend, or you're going to put them in a follow-up tickler file to go back 6 months later. If they get off on the vendor, that's a different ballgame. Now we know that's actually a good sign, because what that tells us is they agree with the need and the method, but they're just not sure about you. Well, you've only been doing this for 2 years, or well, I'm not sure you've been ever worked in my territory. Hey, this is just a new product for you. You're going to get all sorts of tests, which is, can you deliver? Basically, that's what you can, and if you get questions about that aren't about the product itself, but are about fear, where you start to sense some fear around where I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure. You're going to hear I'm not sure a lot, or are you able? That's when we really have to focus on and go back to, you can start delivering some statistics that like Derek did about, well, I began researching this 2 years ago. This is a relatively new problem, as all of you know, but I have done this. I've gone through certification. Certification is an excellent way if they're important for your business. If there are any kind of validators, external validators, this is the time to bring those up. And that's an excellent way to move them through to that process on what the real value of the objection is. If they say no, it'll also give you a direction. If you really blow them away with credibility and they go, no, I totally trust you, I'm just not sure about the UV light. Now we know where we are. So that's where getting as specific as you can with questions about where they got off the bus is going to help you to move them through the funnel to continue and finally close. And the best close is about why to start now. It really is, because that's, if they've agreed with all of the reasons why you're great, the closing should not be complicated. And closing should be an automated part of your process, because there are 2 pieces of the close. There's the piece of the close that says, I agree to do business with you. And there's the mechanical piece that's about purchase and delivery support. How are we getting things done? So the great close is, if everything we've talked about today makes sense for you, what's a good time to start? And I'm happy to share our procedure for onboarding new customers. And I have a team set up, but whatever your process is, this is our process for moving you to the next step, is the last step of your close. Because now you're preparing them to be customers. And that's what we want to be doing. The customer relations versus customer service steps of the funnel I showed you earlier is crucially different. Customer service is reactive. It's about, oh, I had a problem, right? I plugged in and it's not working, or we came in today and was making a weird noise, or whatever's going on. Your process to deal with customer service has to be, in this day and age, almost immediate. Your feedback through email, through other services, have to be reactive, and you have to plan in advance to deliver. That can be hard to do, because one of the reasons I want to break these steps for you and have each of your businesses take a look at it is that you can be prepared. For contractors, for small businesses, for sole proprietors, we tend to go, I'm going to skip back a second, we tend to go through a feast and famine cycle. Because early on, we're spending all our time all in the first 3-4 steps. We're setting up meetings, we're doing appointments, we're doing outbound sales, we're hustling, we're getting stuff going. Then good news, we start to close customers. And that's great. And we get a wave of close. And now we have to fulfill them. And that's even better. And then with those fulfillments comes issues. And now I'm spending my time dealing with customer issues. And if I'm spending my time dealing with customer issues and I'm not consciously focused on image, lead generation, qualifying, and presentations, then I get to a 6 or 12-month period where I have a big rush and things are great, and then it's crickets. And I think, many businesses have been through that. You can write in the chat if you've been through that. I've been through that as a contractor in all my life. And, you at some point, and now you're stuck doing the customer stuff. And if you have a time-based product or a product that doesn't have recurring income, you come to an end of revenue, and then you put all your time back on the top, and we seesaw, and that's often what leads to the first plateau in your business, right? It's your time spent moving back and forth between the top and the bottom of this funnel. And that's why, to the extent we can automate these processes and really clearly identify how we want to move forward and what our message is at each one, as we're growing our revenue, we can have other streams or other folks, or ultimately the team we build, be working in each of these categories to keep the ball rolling while we're building the steps downstream to deliver the constant customer experience that we need in order to keep from having churn. So that's the real reason for having this very carefully thought out process for each one of these steps. What does it mean for you? What is your process to resolve objections? What is your process for you and your salespeople to close? What does customer service look like for you? And is it online or is it offline? Is it both? And is it working? And do you have a method to measure? How most important to all of the steps is that for each one of these categories, you have a way to measure. So you're sending out a survey of something called an NPS or Net Promoter Score to see what people think of your image and your brand. You're measuring the amount of time you put into your lead generation and looking at the results in 3 and 6 months to see how many of those leads came through to be customers. You're looking at qualifying. Are you spending too much time? How much time are you spending with some of these customers versus these customers to determine if you have a good qualifying process? If you have a funnel, a big drop off in funnel, there may be a problem here. And then making presentations and the rest. So the point for your business is, and the question I have for each of you is to answer for yourself, how am I currently measuring each of my business's practices in these categories? Because that is going to be what you're going to give you the power, the information and the power to grow and scale. And ultimately, that's what we want all of you to do. To the extent you're interested in growing and scaling, this is the way you're ultimately going to be doing it. I'm going to take a brief break for questions in the chat. Does anybody have anything they want to follow up on or specific follow-up that they need for understanding how they're measuring and how their funnel is working? Oh, and I see Shakia from Govlia. How are you doing? Are there any tools I recommend to measure? Absolutely. Yes. So let's go to the next step, because that's you're asking the right question, which is, okay, how do I measure each of these things? For each category, the answer to almost any question in your business is from your customers, right? One of the challenges you have is the second piece of information you need are from the people who chose not to be customers. That's the harder piece to get, right? Oftentimes, it's even in the resolving objections section where I was talking about the questions you ask when not, many times you don't get the opportunity for that. Many times people just say, hey, thank you very much for your time. I'm really not interested, and take care. And it's very hard to get follow-up information from someone who's told you no. They may take the time, and some will, and it may be worth buying the time in some way occasionally where, hey, I'm offering a survey and a gift card, or would it be possible for me, this isn't a sales pitch, but is it possible for me to understand where we lost, because it helps my marketing efforts? 1 in 10 might be willing to help you there, but that's the population that you want to try to survey or get into after the fact to say, why did they say no? That's the hard information. The easier information to go to is to your customers. There's a couple ways to kind of information that you're tracking. You're tracking information about how they found you, testing your marketing efforts, and then you're tracking when their first contact started with you. That's the time element. So you can measure that a number of ways. It depends on your sales process. If it was an email, if you met them at a conference, whenever you met them, you want to record that you met them. And so that takes us to the next part of the presentation, which is about systems. This is not a CRM, right? This is my email box. And from this, I can kind of see, oh, okay, well, I can look back and see when that first email is. And again, early in our process, this is many people's CRM. Because you're sending out email, you're getting back email, or you're following up on personal meetings, or you have a flow that goes into, you bought leads, or you've had a Facebook channel, but for some reason you've had a reason to email them and you get back. So we know the date was the first time they emailed, but this can't be the beginning and end. It's just too inefficient, and you can't search it very well. You can search by name, but getting all that data out of the core of an email is not really helpful. And Shakia is agreeing, which I appreciate. It drives me crazy too. So a basic CRM And there are a number of out there. And in the chat, if you have a CRM now, if you could throw in what you use, because there are some extremely complicated CRMs like Salesforce that are ultimately scalable and indexable. They work with thousands and thousands of other pieces of applications, but they can be complicated. Well, it can be. They're extremely complicated, and they can require admin time to manage. The good news now is there are some very simple CRMs online. This one's called Pipeline, or there's one called Quick and Dirty CRM. There's we use Zoho in our shop that allow you to set up very quickly. You can import data from if you have an Excel spreadsheet you've been keeping of your customers somewhere, which is the even easier opportunity to get started. I mean, really, you can start with a spreadsheet. If it's just a question of getting the data out and writing down the top 20 prospects you've had, or 50 or 100, and then when the first date you got, what you've sent them, what they've sent back, but that you're creating those pieces of your funnel and what the steps in your sales process are. I prefer a CRM because it does a couple of things. It allows me to start categorizing people by the activity they've taken, and most CRMs are going to track that activity. So in this particular case, you can see of all the lead cards that that have been entered, we know how many are at new, meaning they probably responded to an online solicitation, or we met them in a conference and they said, hey, yeah, give me a call in a month. Or, oh, it's interesting, I come to your booth. Or they followed up on a lead through LinkedIn, or whatever your harvesting technique is to introduce new people. You have a reason to connect with them. They've shown some interest. Now you're going to define what the next step is and say, okay, for people who have responded inbound, I'm going to call them a level 1, or in this case, new, or a lead. There's all different, depends on how the system converts it. Many go from leads to accounts when you move from the decision to buy. Some will use the word prospect. Again, not so concerned about language, but making sure you have those tranches that you're moving people through. So we move from that new lead. Qualified means we've had a conversation or something about them has indicated they have a need and they have the capacity to pay. That's really important too. And then next, if we're in the business where we send out proposals, this is the time to be at this stage. If you're in a consumer product, it may be they came to the site, they went to the cart, and then they bailed out of the cart. Ooh, cart abandonment's a problem. I need to figure out what happened there. And if I see a lot of people bailing out of the cart, we might have a system problem. So this is where we want to make sure that we're breaking down the flow that we want people to go through, because there's no magic answer, just that we can make sure we're tracking. So in Derek's case, we'll come back to if I met these people at a conference, if I'd given them a demo online, for instance, of the product, or we'd had a conference call or some kind of actual sales discussion where we got that qualifying done, that's moving people into a different set. If they have given a specific need where they'll say, well, I have 4 locations, and you've started to put together a budget, now we're moving down to numbers. And at each step, what we want to do are 2 things. We're going to get our 2 things. Through time, we're going to be able to see it took a month to go from new to proposal, or 2 months, or 3 months. Now I'm measuring. That's a measurement. That's a really important measurement, because that tells me, and oftentimes what you're going to see is the time to execution for B2B is going to be some function of the contract size times months, right? A $10 million deal and a $10,000 deal are very likely to have very different lead times in closing. So it's crucial that we know that. It's crucial we know where they are in the process, so that we can make sure we're hitting them with the right materials. And this is part of where that customer relations part versus customer service comes in, where we're sending them stuff that might be about COVID. It's not about the business even, right? We're keeping the relationship warm while they're in between those 2 critical points. And then we can start looking at what of those actionable lead generation emails actually generated results. And that starts to give us both time and numbers. Finally, negotiation, and this tells us about where those fine points are, and then becoming a customer. And then your CRM system, beautifully, once it converts them to a customer, is going to keep track of them so that you have a way to track the customer service issues and a way to quickly respond, and start to look and group them. And if you start categorizing specific customer service issues, now you can look at your delivery and go, wow, we've got a problem I didn't realize, or my supplier's not doing this, or my installers aren't doing this. So all of this is giving you really important information. And for each of you, what's important is defining each of those steps. What am I going to measure as a crucial action? What takes me a lot of time to do? Or what's a sign that they're moving through the process? If you have an online sign up, that's really important to know. If they've reached out to other of your customers, that's important to know, and you'll be able to track all that here. I have a couple of forms I'll offer you that are real simple, and here's a real simple one. This is kind of a manual spreadsheet, and if this is where you start to map your process in closing, opportunities, contacts, leads, and start talking about these things, it's going to give you a way to start turning this from a paper system into an actual CRM. If the systems part, if you don't have a CRM and you're hesitant about making a jump into the technology, start offline, but start tracking, because this is going to tell you what you need to be tracking, so that when you design a system, or you hand someone, you ask someone to design a system for you, you're giving them a process they can follow. And the other piece of information this is going to start to give you, which is really great if you're measuring, is probability. If I know 6 months from now that I started 6 months ago with 40 leads and 20 and 8 of them closed, I know that I have a 20% probability going forward. So that when I start to go out to raise money or borrow money, I can tell people, hey, if you give me $100,000, I'm going to be able to get 100 leads. And based on my experience in my CRM, I can tell you that that means that 20 of them are going to come through at an average revenue of $400,000. Therefore, my return on this investment will be X. And now we're talking. You have other issues with finance, or pardon me, other groups with finance, but that's the whole purpose for going through the hassle of this thought process and this training and this system, is that we are A, taking a good care of our customers and leads, but B, we have good information to make good decisions. Ultimately, the CRM is about making good decisions for how to run your business. And then the final element's about personal, about what you want to use it for and what your role is. So for some people, the CRM, or who are customer facing, the CRM is really crucial, because if I get an inbound call all of a sudden from Derek, and I'm like, oh gosh, which one was Derek? And I type him in and go, oh yeah, we talked about his kids doing this. And let me, now you have that ability to manage the customer relationship very, very seamlessly and quickly. If on the other hand, you're more in a management role, then you're going to want the dashboards of this thing. You're going to want to see this activity on behalf of the people who work for you. And so different CRMs have different strengths around each of those issues. But all of them, if they're good, should give you a to-do list of your work, right? Your CRM is helping you drive what's important to you. It's giving you summaries of where you are, or some kind of dashboard. And it's giving you opportunities to track going forward. If you look and go, gosh, that guy's been sitting up there a really long time. I wonder what's going on. It's going to remind you to make sure we're going through. So that's the crucial elements we want to make sure you're working through. I'm going to take some of the online Q&A, but what's crucially important as well is we're going to go into much more depth in the 3Rs program and our online learning. So I'm going to encourage you, if you have not already applied and you are a DC-based business, to go to our application at 1863.smapply.io, PROGRR. And again, this link will be in the email we send you to follow up with this email. This entire presentation is recorded, so you can watch this recording again. And we'll also include the deck and any materials. I'll also include, for those who wanted, the single page CRM from our friends at Growth Wheel, to just kind of walk you through and think about write some of your businesses, because sometimes that's what helps me, to write the actual customers or prospects down and and that helps you think through the steps. What do I wish they would do next? What could I have done differently here and there? And it starts to break the pieces down, from first contact to they filled out an application, to we had a meeting or a teleconference, to we followed up with a proposal. Whatever those steps are for you, the more clearly you can map those and track those, the more helpful. So any questions from the chat, I'm happy to take now. But as I said, we'll be providing much more on the Online Learning Center, and we'd be thrilled if you would apply for the Capital One program. Okay. Well, I want to be respectful of people's time, and yours, the one thing I can't do, almost everything is infinite. We can find sources for you to get money. We can find sources for you to get business and partners. I can't find any more than 24 hours in a day for you. And at the end of the day, that's really, that's where your scarcest resource is your time. So to the extent I really appreciate that each of you have taken to invest in your business, right? By taking this time to think, to step back. It can be very challenging. And that's the other reason I don't like the email as a CRM, because new stuff starts coming in, and I was doing follow-up, and now I'm chasing something down, and a good CRM can help you stay disciplined, because there are infinite demands on your time. I deeply appreciate you folks being here. We'll put this out to you, and I look forward to our next presentation. Yep. I'm sorry, we do have one more question. In terms of developing relationships with leads, do you have any more recommendations? My issue is getting directly to the point as opposed to developing the relationship. We can probably take that offline. I think there is a challenge. So, and this again can be part of where the CRM is helpful. For some people, getting to a decision maker is about showing that you have value. For some, it's about referrals. And again, your best salespeople are your customers. So to the extent your customers know each other, part of what you can be doing through your CRM and through your business development lead generation process is reaching out to them to say, hey, do you know X at Y? Or we're going to be looking at ways to expand our business. If you've had a positive experience, would you be willing to share? Featuring your folks in your outbound materials if they're willing to be featured as customers. All of this is a way to do some of that building relationship stuff that's so crucially important, that earns you the right to ask for the meeting in the business. So if the question's about how do I get from the soft and gentle stuff to the more direct closing issues, there's really no way but to earn the relationship and ask the question. But it does go back to testing the need. Do you guys have a need for X? Is always the easiest way to start the conversation about, and people are sensitive to that. People have been more marketed to than at any other time in the past. So they may start to back as soon as you start saying, hey, do you guys have a need for whatever? So questions about their current processes are also good. If you have an existing product or service, every one of your customers at some point was somebody else's customer. So one of the great ways to say is, are you happy with X? And this, when I was in the financial services business, this was an excellent way for me. I would go to my customers and I'd say around this time of year and say, are you happy with your accountant? And I would get a great question. I would get a great response either way, because I was in the investment business. If they said no, I would say, would you like me to recommend one? If they said yes, I said, would you mind if I reach out to them and see if they would be available for recommendations? And now I have through my customers a pool of two different people who have been recommended as good accountants and people who say they need one. And now I'm providing value that's not directly related. This is part of my relationship building strategy. But that got me into the accountants to say, hey, I'm not talking about earning your business and I'm not coming after you for referrals or anything else. I have a referral for you. Are you growing your practice? That shifts the relationship to being a fellow professional who's trying to grow and scale. So what is that equivalent for you? How do you earn that kind of level of trust? And again, it's very much going to depend on the kind of business you have. But to the extent you can be working the network, having your people, your customers connect you, because you're happy customers, again, and I'm sure in your own purchase experiences, you've all experienced, if you have a relative or a friend say, you got to try this, there's no amount of selling I could do that's going to overcome that. It's going to be more powerful than that, right? So as you're starting with that, let's move on. Let's think about how we build the network from those closest to us in a relationship business. If it's a transaction, then it's about volume. If they're a purchasing manager in a commodity type business, it's making sure you hit them when we say when money is in motion, meaning something has gone wrong with that current vendor, and you hit them at the right time. And we've all had that experience where, gosh, I can't believe I'm just meeting you because this just happened. Well, the only way to make sure to get that lucky is to be repetitively in contact. So those are your two main strategies. One is more of a shotgun approach. One is more of a rifle approach. I don't like the violence analogies, but one's more, scattershot. And you want to do that in a way that's inexpensive and high credibility, and probably online. But making sure that your system is looking and seeing, and if you get any indicators if they have a cycle, they're making purchases. If they tell you anything that there's a time in the future, being there, at the right time is often the crucial indicator. So thank you all again. I'm Art Stevens with 1863. Please go look at the 3 R's program online. And please feel free to email us with any other questions. And you'll be getting the follow-up to this presentation in less than 24 hours with the access to the recording, and with links to follow on. Thank you all so much.